Remember that time I thought I could afford a fancy dinner and ended up washing dishes to pay the bill? Oh yes, it was the infamous night of the Lobster Thermidor. Picture this. I'm sitting in a swanky restaurant, jazz music filling the air, the aroma of gourmet cuisine wafting around. I'm feeling like $1,000,000. And there it was, the Lobster Thermidor winking at me from the menu. It was calling my name, and I, like a sailor drawn to a siren song, ordered it without a second thought. The meal was delicious. The lobster succulent, the sauce divine. I was living the high life, or so I thought, until the bill arrived. The Lobster Thermidor, the glass of vintage wine, the French dessert I couldn't pronounce, all added up to a number that had my wallet screaming for mercy. I could feel the color draining from my face as I realized I had bitten off more than I could chew, quite literally. In that moment, I had two choices, to make a run for it, or to face the music. I chose the latter, and the next thing I knew, I was up to my elbows in soap suds, scrubbing away at a mountain of dishes. Oh, the irony! From dining like a king to washing dishes in the back kitchen, all in the span of a few hours. It was a night that served me a slice of humble pie, making me realize that my financial literacy was about as good as my ability to resist fancy seafood. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that being money-wise is not about how much you earn, but how well you manage what you have. So, what's the moral of this story? It's simple. Always know your limits, especially when it comes to your finances. Don't let the allure of lobster thermidors lead you astray. So, from that day on, I made a vow, no more dishwashing for me. Have you ever experienced the thrill of finding money in your old jeans? That's budgeting for you. Now let's take a trip down memory lane to a time when I was just a broke college student. I had spent all my money on concert tickets, forgetting entirely about my monthly bills. Oops! But then, I remembered I had stashed away some cash in a budgeting jar. It was like finding buried treasure. And just like that, my electricity didn't get cut off, and I got to enjoy the concert, guilt-free. Here's another gem. I was invited to a friend's wedding in Hawaii. At first I thought, aloha, debt. But guess what? I'd been setting aside money for travel in my budget. I didn't have to sell an organ or live off instant noodles for a month to afford the trip. I was sipping on my Mai Tai on a Hawaiian beach, thanking my past self for the foresight of budgeting. And who can forget the time I wanted to buy the latest gaming console? It was the talk of the town, and I had to get my hands on it. Instead of impulsively buying it and living on bread and water for the rest of the month, I decided to budget for it. I saved a little from my paycheck each month, and before I knew it, I had enough to buy the console without going broke. Victory dance, anyone? Budgeting is not about depriving yourself. It's about giving yourself the freedom to enjoy your money without the stress of debt or financial instability. It's about planning for the future while still enjoying the present. It's about knowing you can handle unexpected expenses without breaking a sweat. It's about the thrill of finding money in your old jeans, or in my case, in my budgeting jar, travel fund, or gaming console, piggy bank. And that, my friends, is why I now check every pocket before doing laundry. Ever seen a squirrel hoarding nuts for winter? Well, we can learn a thing or two from our furry friends. Let's take a trip down memory lane to a time when I found myself in a bit of a financial pickle. Picture this. I'm standing at the checkout line of a grocery store, my cart overflowing with enough food to feed an army, or more accurately, my army of friends coming over for a weekend feast. As the cashier rings up my items, my heart sinks. The total is way more than I expected. I sheepishly reach for my wallet, praying my credit card isn't maxed out. Now here's where our little squirrel friends come into play. You see, I had been squirreling away a small portion of my paycheck every month into a separate savings account. Not a lot, mind you, just enough to not miss it too much. A bit like a squirrel stashing away nuts one at a time. It didn't seem like much, but over time it had added up. So, back to the grocery store. As I hand over my card, I'm mentally preparing myself for the embarrassment of it being declined. But to my surprise, the transaction goes through. No problem. I breathe a sigh of relief. I was able to cover the cost because of the money I'd been saving, my little stash of nuts. The moral of the story, just like squirrels preparing for winter, we need to prepare for unexpected expenses. Even saving small amounts can make a big difference when you need it most. It's not just about having a safety net, it's about gaining peace of mind. Knowing you've got a cushion to fall back on can take a load off your shoulders. So whether it's setting aside a few dollars from each paycheck or saving your spare change, every little bit helps. Start your own nut stash, and you'll be surprised at how quickly it grows. So next time you see a squirrel, remember, they're onto something. You know what's scarier than a horror movie? Not investing your money. Now, I remember the first time I decided to try my hand at investing. I felt like a cat being introduced to water, apprehensive and more than a little bit scared. My mind was full of horror stories I'd heard about people losing all their savings in a blink. I imagined my hard-earned money disappearing into the ether, leaving me broke and regretful. So there I was, staring at the screen, my hand hovering over the mouse. It felt like I was about to jump off a cliff into a sea of unknowns. A sea filled with sharks called stock market crashes and bad investments. But then, I took a deep breath and clicked that invest button. And you know what happened? Nothing. No thunderstorm, no sudden power outage, no ominous music playing in the background, just a simple confirmation message on the screen. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and my investment started showing some promising signs. Yes, there were ups and downs, but it wasn't the roller coaster ride I had envisioned. It was more like a scenic train ride with occasional bumps. And the best part, I was learning, growing, and making money. Suddenly investing didn't feel like a horror movie anymore, it was more like a mystery novel, full of suspense and excitement, but ultimately rewarding if you stick with it. I realized that the real monster wasn't investing itself, it was the fear of taking that first step, the fear of the unknown. I learned that investing, like anything new, can be intimidating at first, but it's not as scary as it sounds. It's about making informed decisions, being patient, and most importantly, learning from your mistakes. Remember, the only thing scarier than investing is not investing at all. Because then you're not just risking losing some money, you're risking losing out on the opportunity to grow your wealth. And that's how I discovered that investing isn't a monster hiding under my bed. So want to hear how I went from dishwashing to living my financial freedom dream? Let's take a quick trip down memory lane. Remember when we talked about the struggle is real? That's right, I was scrubbing dishes, counting pennies, and dreaming of a life where I could afford more than just instant noodles. But then, I discovered the magic of budgeting. It was like finding a treasure map, except the treasure was my own money that I'd been wasting on unnecessary stuff. And let's not forget that budgeting wasn't just about cutting back. Oh no, it was about being smart with my money. It was about understanding the difference between needs and wants and making sure my needs were always covered first. Then came the part where I turned into a squirrel. Well, not literally, but I started saving like one. I realized that saving wasn't just for rainy days, it was for sunny ones too. It was for that trip to Bali I'd always dreamed of, or that guitar I'd always wanted to buy. And then I faced the big scary monster, investment. Just the word used to give me the chills, but guess what? It wasn't as scary as it sounded. In fact, it was like planting a money tree. I had to water it, nurture it, and over time it started bearing fruit. And this brings us to today. I'm not washing dishes anymore. I'm living my financial freedom dream, and you know how I got here? By following these steps. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about the money, it was about the freedom that came with it. The freedom to live life on my own terms, to make my own choices. So, here's a funny story. The other day, I bought a dishwasher. Yes, a dishwasher. And as I watched it doing its thing, I couldn't help but laugh. I'd come a long way from my dishwashing days. Now it's your turn to start your journey towards financial freedom. Remember, it's never too late to avoid the dishwashing fate.